Welcome back to Networking Unleashed, Building Profitable Connections, the podcast where we uncover the strategies, stories, and systems that turn relationships into real results. I'm your host, Michael Forman, and today's episode is going to challenge the way you think about career growth, collaboration, and connection. We're diving into three main doors into business: starting one, buying one, and stepping into the franchise world. My guest today knows these paths inside and out, and will explore how networking plays a pivotal role in each. Spoiler alert, franchising isn't just following a playbook, it's about building real, profitable, and local relationships. So let's get into it. I'd like to introduce Chris Ramo. He is my guest today. He's got really quite a background, but I'll let him tell you. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. I have plenty to say about growing business, and the reason for that is we started really with an idea and built everything from scratch. And along that path, had other experiences, opportunities to buy, sell, eventually get into franchising. And while I may not be as experienced as some, I've been at this for about 20 years now, and happy to share anything that I can with the audience.
All right, so let's dive right in.
Yeah.
You've worked across all three entry points into business: startup, acquisition, and franchise. Which one requires the strongest network and why?
I think the that's a tough one. Startup, startup for sure. And the only other one that may be neck and neck with that is franchising. The startup, though, we'll focus on that for a moment. That's boy, when you have nothing but an idea, right? You do need help. You need help finding your way. And there's so much to learn, so many mistakes to be made. And the more people that you can bring into your network to help you through those mistakes, help you not run into those trees. And if you do run into those trees, help you get reoriented and continue on. You can't do any of it by yourself. And so you absolutely need a network. And above all, I think a mentor or series of mentors in that startup realm. It's really hard, extremely hard. Look at the number of businesses that fail after year one, after year two, after year five, after year 10. That's because it's really hard. And so you need people around you to help you do that.
Wouldn't you agree that you really make the most progress from your failures than your successes?
100%, at least for me. I've always, long time ago, I saw the acronym FAIL, first attempt in learning. And I don't know if there's been a truer way to look at the situation. If you're hell bent on accomplishing said goal, said feat, whether you're an Olympic swimmer in the pool or you're an entrepreneur trying to build a business, each of those mistakes, each failure, each time you lose, yes, you are walking, you got to lick your wounds, you got to walk away, and you got to put that to good use. Don't waste that. Don't waste that loss, that experience, and that education in that loss, and not go back out there and use that to your advantage. That's terribly unfortunate when people lose and they just walk away, right?
Yeah, it is. And I 100% totally agree with you. I'm a former business owner myself, brick and mortar business owner, from pizzerias to restaurants to ice cream stores, graphic design studio. I've run the gambit, but those were only my successful businesses. And my businesses that flopped, I learned. I went to the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
I had to learn everything the hard way, but that's all right. Okay. So in franchising, people often underestimate the power of relationships. How does a strong network influence franchise success?
Well, I think there's two streams there. There's the network as a franchisor, right? And franchising is a very unique business model. It's heavily regulated, it's extremely expensive, but it can be a model and a path that brings tremendous success to everybody involved. And so as a franchisor, similar to the startup, and that's why I felt like those two were really neck and neck. It's there are so many layers to doing it successfully that you need mentors, you need coaches, you need lawyers, you need professionals with with a franchise specialty to help you navigate those waters, and including vendors and suppliers and people who are going to bring your franchise concept their skills, talent, and expertise. And so you have to build a strong network to help your franchise grow. And what that's doing is bringing all of those same resources to your franchisees. And that's the second part of the equation, is building a network of franchisees, and those franchisees building networks within their community, right? As a small business owner. And boy, relationships are everything in franchising, in my estimation, primarily between the franchisor and the franchisee. A lot of the short talk language that goes on around franchising is profitability and AUV, and it's numbers oriented, and it's about growth and scalability and all of those things. And that's absolutely a huge part of what everyone's doing in franchising. There's an opportunity to scale a business here, but you cannot do it if you do not have strong relationships with your franchisees, right? Because it is based entirely on trust, and then from trust to validation, right? Franchisees looking at a franchise concept, they think they want to do it. I like this brand. I like what it's about. I'm going to become a franchisee. There's oftentimes a significant upfront investment, especially if it's a brick and mortar, right? They've got to go through a construction build out and renovations. You can be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, and whether that's through a bank loan or they're funding that themselves, that's a separate part. But at the end of the day, they're putting their money where their mouth is, right? And they expect the same from the franchisor. And you have to be open, transparent, honest. You have to let them know we don't have resources for that yet. We're still working on that. We're building that. Or we do that well and we know that well. And here's what we're going to tell you should do because we know this. And so everything is relationship oriented. It's essentially a marriage. It's a business marriage for 5 years or 10 years, however long your agreement is, and through thick and thin. And there is trust, there is both thick and thin. A franchisor cannot protect, there's not a force field to challenge for the franchisees. That's not what it is. It is mentorship and guidance and coaching and resources, but those curveballs still come, right? We're not standing in front of the curveballs. They're still coming at you, and we're just trying to teach you how to swing. It is very deeply relationship oriented in a business setting.
I agree 100%. I've been a franchise owner as well, and I realize the relationships are so important between myself and the franchisor. That relationship is so important, but my relationship with my customer base as well. And the days of building your customer list really is gone. The days of building relationships is there because you never know who knows who, right? You're talking to not only those people, but those people networks, right? So you're talking to a grander audience.
And nowadays there's a digital network, right? So if you don't have a
Yes.
great relationship with one of your customers or one of your clients, they're not just talking to their circle of friends during the dinner party. They're talking to 300 million people via a Google review.
Okay. Very good point. Very good point. Okay. So what makes networking essential when someone is evaluating or buying a franchise?
It goes back to the trust. I think they need to see and know and understand that you have a network of resources available to them. That's part of what they are entering into that brand for. Hey, I have the gumption. I've got the tenacity to start and run a business, but I don't have the resources. I don't have the know-how. And this brand seems well prepared, and maybe they don't have all of the resources that will ever be needed, but they have a marketing team. They have accountants and bookkeepers that might be available to me, whether required or through a recommendation. Okay, I'm stepping into a network, a system that already exists with all of these resources. That's a significant value. Otherwise, I have to go develop that and build that myself, I'm going to go through 4 accountants before I find the accountant that's right for me. I'm going to go through 6 marketing agencies before I find the marketing agency that's right for me. And these folks have done a lot of that and vetted that. And so I'm almost, it's not business in a box. And a lot of people say that, but it's not that. It is, you do, and it's not turnkey, but you are turning the key and opening the door, and you're walking into a lot of opportunities and a lot of networking opportunities. And then on the other side, in terms of, that's once they become a franchisee. I think before they become a franchisee, there's a part of that process that we refer to as validation. And that's where existing franchisees are given the opportunity to speak to a candidate. And that can be no holds barred, right? If they're happy, they're going to say good things about the franchise. And if they're not happy, they're not going to say good things about the franchise. And there's no limitations. They're an independent business. It's has virtually nothing to do with us. And that network of franchisees, existing franchisees, is what the prospective franchisee is looking to build, right? To build with and learn from. And then they become a franchisee inevitably. And now, okay, these were the people who helped me make my decision or not make my decision if that was the case, and they ended up doing something else. But it is so much relationship driven. Sometimes I'd argue before numbers driven. What's the family I'm stepping into here?
Do you find that a lot of the franchisees communicate with one another and help them out?
Yeah, we encourage it. Absolutely. And I think it's easy for us to encourage it because we're very confident of the culture that we have here and that we've developed in our particular brand. But that's so important. And they'll cite that too. We have an internal communications hub that we use to share information from franchisees, and they have their own chats developed where they're problem solving and working with each other. The ones that are more senior are certainly passing down anything that they've learned, any of their takeaways. Don't let that contractor tell you this, yeah, stuff like that. And it grows and it fosters a positive culture. And then if there's one that just doesn't fit in and they don't want to participate and they want to do their own thing or whatever, the groups understand, the group sees that, group senses that, right? And it's always open doors because a franchisee is a franchisee, but we're gonna continue helping each other over here. And if you want to do your own thing over there, that's fine. The results are being driven through participating in the family, in the network, in the cohort, maybe would be the best term for it.
Okay, good, great. Okay, so tell me about a time when a single relationship changed the trajectory of a business purchase or franchise opportunity.
I think I would cite two, there's really two that come to mind. One is upon meeting our attorney, our franchise attorney. We had been with a couple of attorneys throughout the previous 2 years of setup and development. And that probably doesn't sound good. Like we got fired from 2 attorneys. No, that wasn't the case. The first one created our initial documents, retired shortly thereafter. So we had to go find a new group to work with. And it just was not a good fit. And so then we moved on from there and found our current attorney. And once that happened, boy, everything fell into place. And just because he understood our place in the world as a micro emerging franchisor, as a startup franchisor, certainly confident with his legal advice and so on and so forth, but a lot of good franchise business advice as well. And to this day, before we make a big decision, we turn to him and say, hey, bouncing this off you, what do you think? What do you see out there? Is this something franchises are doing? And it's good general all around counsel. And so what that did was once we were in alignment, it opened the doors to how are we going to really develop this brand for ourselves. And the other one I think is probably our first franchisee. When they came into the picture and they had inquired, it was about a year. So they inquired at the February of 2020. So
Okay.
there's something starting to develop around that time across the globe, February of 2020. And so there was a lot going on. We liked them a lot, and they were looking at becoming our first franchisees. And there were a lot of challenges, as you can imagine. And that took the better part of that year, all of 2020, to work on that relationship, work on what's going on in the world. What is this going to mean? How are we going to proceed? It was a registration state. We had to figure that out. There were things, and it all came together end of year, December. I think they signed December 28th of 2020. And that changed everything for us. We had done it. We had our first franchisee. They were completely bought in. They saw how we handled the pandemic from a business perspective. That gave them the confidence that, like, look, no matter what challenges may be around the corner, we're with the right people, the right brand. And that opened the doors for number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They all came based on the validation, right? Going back to that validation question of those first franchisees and everything that they had to say and share in their experience with us as the first ones through the door.
Wow, that was great. That was a great story, by the way. Okay, you had mentioned turnkey. That's really not turnkey. There's a myth that franchises are just plug and play. Where does networking still come into play post purchase?
A lot of two-part answers, I feel like, today. Two-part answer. One, I think the strongest network that the franchisee post franchise signing, post agreement, is with the other franchisees, which we touched on a moment ago. That is far and away the number one network. They rely on each other, validate for each other. Even sometimes it's emotional, right? Man, this build out process is really challenging. And hey, I've been there. You're going through what everyone goes through, and here are some things that I learned, and so on and so forth. So that network is number one. And I think for the franchisee, and we have a lot of conversations about this on the front end, there's that personal network for them, because whether they're stepping into a franchise or starting something on their own, their friends, their family, their partners in home, their spouse, their children, they're about to step into a life with a franchise, with an entrepreneur. I'll put it that way. And in our case, it's a franchisor. So when they're considering joining the franchise, we require that at the very least, even if your partner, whoever is closest to you in your life, usually it's a spouse or a live-in partner, a domestic partner, they have to at least get on one, maybe two calls with us. Oh, no, they're not going to be involved. This is my endeavor. We understand, but we want to talk to them, and we want them to ask us questions, and we want to all be on the same page, because they're about to be the partner of an entrepreneur, and that's a completely different life. And if they're not on board, that's going to come to roost at some point. Why are you working so late? Why are you working so many days? You haven't been around, blah, blah, blah. And that's going to wear on you, and that's going to stress you. Division can start to creep in. And so that personal network is extremely important after the signing as well, right? So going up to, getting through the finish line, and then post franchise agreement, because they're going to need continued support, emotional and otherwise. And just like we were talking about at the onset, you can't do it by yourself. You can't do it within the franchise system by yourself or the business system by yourself, but you can't do it personally either. It takes a lot to be a business owner, and you have to have a strong personal network that's going to support you through thick and thin.
Yeah, no, listen, being a former business owner, I worked 8 days a week. I worked 25 hours a day. I worked 366 days a year. That's what, and my wife understood that. She said, look, you're just starting a business. You've got to put the time in. But I didn't really realize how much time I need to put in until I got in there.
Yeah.
And then it all happened. But it was good for the most part.
That's the duck. That's the duck meme, right? Or the duck video. So I think people who are not familiar with business ownership and entrepreneur, they see the duck, that's the business owner gliding across the water, right? Oh, they get everything in life they wanted. And what's happening underneath the surface of the water? Paddling like a mad
like
person,
like
trying like crazy, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And that's all that I can remember. Okay, so how should someone who's buying a business network differently from someone starting from scratch?
So in in a business purchase, I think the network really starts with how are you finding that business and how are you vetting that business, right? A lot of times a transaction like that will be represented by a business broker, and that broker is bringing the network of available businesses to your table for consideration. And so finding the right business broker, business consultant to do that, and trusting that, hey, you and that person are in alignment with what you're looking for. Do you want to be in manufacturing? Do you want to be in service? Do you want to be in the restaurant industry? And what can you afford to do? And what's your experience? And are they bringing you a complicated business that you shouldn't be getting involved in if this is your first time through the process? Can they find something simpler that might be available? And finding that right consultant to help you through that journey is probably step number one. That's probably the most important part of that network. Outside of that are the other people who are going to vet that opportunity, right? Your accountant, certainly your legal counsel. Again, we can go back to your personal network, right? What are the requirements of this new business that you're thinking about buying? What does that look like? And so because it's established, there are like when we talk about the accounting part, there's already numbers flowing through, right? So you need hard analysis on that. Is this viable? Does it make sense? Whereas when you're a startup, there are no numbers. It's all conceptual. And any accountant that you work with, network with, they're not going to have, they might have some general guidance. Hey, just make sure your profit margin's here and make sure your expenses don't go above this general consensus number, but they can't really give you any deep analysis because there's nothing to analyze. So you're starting that process, you're going to build that business and you're going to work with them as it develops. When you're buying a business, all that stuff exists and you need hard eyes to help you work through, does this make sense? And there's so many different components, right? The team, the existing labor, what kind of technologies, what is the reputation of the business out in the world? You need a network of good analysts to help you through that process.
Good. Okay, what's a small networking action a new franchisee could take that leads to big long-term gains?
So know that some of that answer is going to be dependent on the brand, right? So we have a pet oriented brand, and for us, networking with veterinarians is far and away one of the most beneficial relationships that you can start to develop as a franchisee of our brand. Whereas another brand, it could be a very different group or subset of professionals. But in general, it is finding the top, we'll call it one, two, maybe three referral sources for yourself, right? So you always want to network with customers, but that's one relationship for each customer. It's one to one the whole way through.
Right.
If you can find that B2B relationship, is there another professional industry that kind of accentuates your business? There's some synchronicity there. So we're in the pet care field. So what doesn't it make sense? Veterinarians. And so finding that B2B and working your network through those other connections can bring it's almost like a pyramid, right? You have the one referral source, that B2B referral source at the top, and you're benefiting with all of the referral opportunities from just that one relationship. You made one relationship, you get all those referrals. It's exponential versus having to go through one by one with each individual customer.
That's where stoking your relationship really comes in handy. It's not just a customer. You're not selling widgets. I have three for a dollar. You want to buy it? Good. It's very transactional, right? What we're doing, both you and I, in different ways, is we're building relationships, and you don't know what type of relationship you're building, because you're not only building a relationship with that person, but you're building a relationship with all of their relationships. So it can go even longer.
Yeah. And people hold that tightly, right? Like a recommendation. If I'm going to make a recommendation, I, I want to know that recommendation is going to work well. And if it doesn't or it hasn't, I feel horrible. And it may not even have been in my control or whatever. That's something that people hold dear, pretty dear to them, is their reputation, because it's carried through that recommendation. And so if you can build positive relationships where people are opening up and, yeah, I have a guy for that, yeah, I have a woman for that, sure, I have a professional for that, you're well on your way. Networking is 9/10 of the equation of success. There's no question.
It's crucial. I believe that networking is the base or basis of all businesses. Everyone has, whether it's digital or in person or both, probably both. It's you just have to go out there. They have to see your face, see you, feel you, touch you. You have that whole networking mantra: know you, like you, trust you. They'll do business with you. Everything has to come to pass in order for you just to go to the next step. And that's part of what I do, but
Yeah.
that is all inclusive. So let's bring this podcast full circle.
Yeah.
How has your personal network evolved as you've moved through these three models? What do you lean on most today?
Cure really dependent for me to continue my entrepreneurial journey. I really have to rely heavily on instincts, and those instincts, certainly they're a part of DNA. That's what's instinctual about them. But as you go through life journey, challenges, successes, all of that, it certainly gets refined. And from a human to human networking perspective, it's relying on the people who are walking that path with you, for you, but they also have to be doing it for themselves. And that means that they believe in what we're doing here, right? So whether it's my COO, my ops director, our managing, or I'm sorry, our marketing director, whether it's investors, whether it's the franchisees, it is relying on them to a degree to do what they do best. And in that delegation of that sort of that responsibility, they're bringing the organization to a level that I could not possibly do myself. And you build that network internally, externally, whatever, both sides really, and you have to rely on it. You have to trust it. And there's only blind trust at the very beginning, right? But those instincts kind of bridge that gap. And then from there, the trust is developed because you see the results.
Absolutely. Chris, I can probably talk to you for another hour about all of this because I've learned so much and it makes me rethink everything with networking itself, especially with a brick and mortar and everything else. But networking, I still believe, is the basis of all businesses. Go ahead.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if there's a monitor in front of us and 3,000 miles between us, there's still a human on either end of that connection. And so I think
Absolutely.
business, we're worried about AI, we're worried about what does technology mean for things, and we're going to have to figure that out as a species. But as long as we're here, business is transacted between two humans, and it always will and forever till we're not here anymore.
Very good. As a matter of fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to steal that because I like that.
Have at it.
Chris, this has been great. If somebody wanted to get hold of you, either to talk about a franchise, to talk about business, or just anything, just to wave hello,
Yeah.
how would they get hold of you?
Primarily our franchise website is a great place to start. So it's happycatfranchising.com. Happy Cat is our franchise brand. It's a luxury cat boarding and grooming concept. If you're pet oriented, have at it there. There's an online form. You can fill that out and it'll go to the necessary party. If you put a note in there trying to reach me, I'll certainly get it. And then we do a podcast of our own, actually. And I do that separate from Happy Cat, but that's really for small businesses and aspiring entrepreneurs primarily. And so if your audience is listening because they're trying to learn, that's another avenue. It's At the End of the Day podcast. They can catch us over there.
It's great. Chris, thank you very much for coming on today, and I hope to speak with you soon.
You got it, Michael. Anytime. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let's hear from our sponsors. David Neal, co-founder, Revved Up Kids. Revved Up Kids is on a mission to protect children and teens from sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. They provide prevention training programs for children, teens, and adults. To learn more, go to revvedupkids.org. Henry Kaplan, Century 21. When it comes to making the biggest financial decision of your life, leave it in the hands of a proven professional, Henry Kaplan. Henry is a global real estate agent with Century 21, celebrating his 41st year in business. No matter where you're moving, Henry has the right connections for you. You can contact Henry at 561-427-4888. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. If you're interested in my digital courses, being coached, or having me come and talk to your company, just go to Michael and fill out the request form. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, or my website, forman.com/podcasts.